Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the fluoride controversy, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about this very, very controversial item of fluoride, Mr. Daniel Stockin. And of course, Mr. Stockin is a health researcher for the Lilly Center, a public health and environmental health concern located in Brentwood, Tennessee. And of course, Mr. Stockin, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And to tell you, Mr. Stockin, how delighted we are to have you here this morning. And I think that our audience has already identified this setup that we have here, and I think this might be our first over the last 25 or 30 years. But nevertheless, I think it's very, very important because the issue that we're going to deal with this morning is an issue that people might have a difficult time relating to unless they can identify this issue of fluoride. And so that's what we want to talk about this morning, about this as an issue, as a controversy. And of course, before we do that, let's give you an opportunity to give us some information about Daniel Stockin.
Okay.
Your background, your education, and some of the things that led you to the Lilly Center as a health researcher.
Well, thank you. I'm one of those people, I have a background in public health and environmental health. I've been in it for 17 years. I'm one of those people that you used to see, or some people do see, that put a big white suit or suit on, or one of the big respiratory protection systems on their back, and I used to dive into spills of radioactive materials, of biologic agents, dealt with chemical hazards, hazardous waste. So that's what I kind of cut my teeth on in my public health career. And over the years, I've worked in health care as well as in environmental health. And we got involved in this. I work for a company called the Lilly Center. We offer public health and environmental health training classes, is what we do. We got involved in this issue about fluoride, sort of not really planning on doing it. It came at us kind of sideways. And some people in this area may see signs on the side of the road that says fluoridated drinking water. Well, my boss had a reaction on her skin, and she was asking me one day, could it possibly be caused by fluoride in the water? She was new to the area, had never been around fluoridated water. Well, I did what I've done hundreds of times in my career. I backed away from a chemical and just looked at it. What does it do in the body, and how does it affect it, and these kind of things. What we found just made our jaw drop. And a lot of information on this nature has come out in the past few years. And we have found that the majority of health professionals, certainly average citizens, and people at water districts just don't know some of the real basics. So that's all we wanted to talk about today, keep it real simple and real practical. And so our idea is to just present some of these facts in the way that the average person, you don't have to be a scientist, anything at all, because there's a real couple of fundamental key points that we would hope folks listening to this can take away.
Well, you know, one of the things that when we think about fluoride, I think most people generally relate that to some kind of dental operation or dental science or cavities and et cetera, et cetera. But what you're about to tell us now is that this is an issue that covers not only dental science, but all of these things that you have in here have some aspect of that of fluoride in it. Let's talk about it from that perspective.
Sure,
talk
sure.
to us about that.
Most people are only familiar with their toothpaste tube. It says fluoride on it. And we've always thought that fluoride just prevents cavities, and we've been doing it for about 50 years or more. The issue is that a bunch of information has now come out that we're not just getting fluoride in our toothpaste. We're getting it in our water, and we're getting it in a lot of other sources. But what people don't know is that fluoride is actually a poison. If you look on the back of your toothpaste tube, you'll see there's a warning. If a child swallows more than is used for brushing, it says to call a poison control center. Most people never really read that. So the thing that we start talking to people about is that fluoride is a cumulative poison, and that's a really key point. What that means is the little bits that you get over the years start adding up, and it's the cumulative lifetime effect that can cause a number of health problems. So that's what we wanted to talk about. And most people don't know that fluoride comes out of the earth. It looks kind of like this. It's just it's calcium fluoride. This is where it's usually found in earth. But the kind of fluoride that we use today to add to our drinking water to prevent cavities in kids, entirely different than this. And so I wanted to talk about that and talk a little bit about the history of it. It's been going on for about 50 years. And so now we've had our first full generation of people who've grown up getting little doses of this accumulating poison. And that's one of the key issues, is that's why the health effects are happening. And cities across the United States are starting to reject this. 6 of 7 cities in early November that were looking at fluoridation rejected it. And so there's a lot of issues. They affect certain groups more than others, and we want to talk about that. We think your viewers would be interested to know that.
Very good. And of course, we're getting ready, Mr. Stockin, for our first commercial break, after which we'll come back and we'll give you an opportunity to further inform us in reference to this as an issue, and to perhaps give us any kind of advice that we might need in order to understand it better and to fight against it. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The guest is Mr. Daniel Stockin, and the topic is the fluoride controversy. And of course, Mr. Stockin, I think we promised before our first commercial break that we'd give you an opportunity to further inform us of the impact that this 50-year-old item is having upon our society today. So let's pick up at that point.
Okay, yes, you know, I want to say that what I'm about to share, what we did is we looked around at all the different information that's now come out about fluoride. And what we've done is we've collected information that's just not getting distributed or aired very much from the American Dental Association or the Centers for Disease Control, the Department of Agriculture. So I just want to say that what we're about to share, we have a lot of backup documentation on this. And really an important thing to understand is, you know, when we talk about toothpaste tubes, it did say on the back that it can be a poison. In fact, if a child swallows this whole tube, he may die. Well, one of the concerns about this is that back in the 40s and the 30s, when we first started to fluoridate, they were going to use a chemical called sodium fluoride, which happens to be the stuff that's in this tube. They had a little public relations problem. Americans knew sodium fluoride as rat poison and roach poison. There was a problem with that. And so it came out that some documents came out in a couple lawsuits that there was a meeting of dental directors in Washington early on, and what they did is they were talking about, what about toxicity issues? What about that? And they were so zealous to want to prevent kids' cavities that what came out in the transcripts, you can read this, they said, if people bring up the whole body toxicity issue, just pass that over. Don't bring up the sodium fluoride issue, don't bring up rat poison, because that's just not a good thing to talk about. And so they just really wanted to prevent cavities. But the question is, was that a good thought process to not look at the whole body effects of fluoride? Because we were going to be swallowing it, you know, in the water for our whole lives. Little by little, this thing called a cumulative poison. Well, one of the things that came out in this is that now recently we found out where the fluoride that we use comes from, and this is really critical. If people who live in the Middle Tennessee area will look at their water quality report from their water district, you're going to find out in some of them it'll say where the fluoride comes from. And I'll just share what it is. This is shocking, it's a little disturbing, but 90% of the fluoride chemical that we use is taken from air pollution collection devices on smokestacks at fertilizer factories. If you can believe that, that has been acknowledged by the fluoridation folks. In fact, a lot of them in Tennessee didn't even know it, but we brought it up and they said, oh, well, okay, it is true. And see, that the concern about that is, this isn't some clean kind of fluoride. In fact, the fluoride that when we started testing in the 50s, they didn't even finish the initial testing. They were going to test it for 10 to 12 years and then start promoting it. Halfway through, they said, well, we don't really need to finish the test. Let's just start putting it in water. Well, now the bill has come due on that. And we started doing it, and you know how hard it is to stop something once you started it. Well, this chemical is called silica fluoride, is what is being used. It comes from these air pollution collection devices. What was happening is the fluoride in the processing of fertilizer was coming up to the smokestacks and harming cows and crops all around the area. So they had to collect it before it did. They put an air pollution device on it. And they had this liquid stuff. It had 19% fluoride. And so they said, why don't we take that and put it in the public water supply, and it'll be a win-win. We won't pollute the environment, and kids won't get cavities. Well, and that's an actual fact.
Well, now, it was made up of 19% of
fluoride.
Well, now, what was the other?
Well, there you go.
81% of this item.
Unfortunately, there were in the fluoride chemical that we use today in 90% of all fluoridation programs, it has arsenic, lead, mercury, and radioactive compounds in it in small amounts. And all of them are also cumulative poisons. They build up in your body. So this is big news. I don't know how you feel about your body being the final resting place of the toxic discharges of industry. As a public health professional, I'm not real thrilled at it. Then something else came up. In the year 2000, well, let's back up. When we first started fluoridating, adding this chemical to our water, we said, the reason is kids will swallow it. Your body will use it inside to build strong, cavity-resistant teeth. But then in the year 2000, we found out that it doesn't work that way. It actually inhibits cavities, the little amount that it does inhibit, topically. So the example of that is this right here. This is sunscreen. If you went to your doctor and you were getting sunburn, and your doctor said to you, drink this to prevent sunburn, you'd look at him and you'd say, why would I drink this? It works on the surface of my skin. It works topically. Well, that's the issue. Now that we know that it works primarily topically, in other words, when it touches your teeth in your mouth, that kind of voids the whole purpose for us drinking it in the first place. Why would we drink it our whole lives? A primarily topically acting substance.
At all?
Right. And see, the thing is, when we find out about all the other risks, the health risks, and you weigh the limited cavity prevention versus all the other risks, you would probably do what most of the rest of the world has done. Places like Germany, China, Belgium, 98% of Western Europe, they reject water fluoridation. And guess what? Their cavity rates are as good or better than ours.
And so we are, in a real sense, and I also heard that the EPA has not licensed this fluoride to be used as a medicine. Is that true?
Well, that's an interesting point. You know, this is the only substance we add to water that treats a condition in our bodies rather than treating the water itself. We add chlorine to kill germs in the water, but this is added to the water to treat something in your body and my body. That means it's a medicine. How do we feel about getting a forced medication? Do people really understand? That's why we're grateful for this opportunity to share this with people. And the other point I wanted to make is it's about this right here. This is really critical. You see all these are foods. And here's the thing. We are not just getting fluoride in our water or in our toothpaste. When you get canned corn or beans, you get a dose of fluoride. When your baby gets chicken sticks, he gets a dose of fluoride. When you drink apple juice, you get a dose of fluoride. Grape jelly, raisin bran, breads. Look at the sheer, what's happening is we're getting so much fluoride. These are made with fluoridated water, or they have a fluoride pesticide residue in them. So what that does is, this cumulative poison, if you get it from all these sources, the water, the toothpastes, and all these foods, tea, soda, coffee, you're getting, we're being overdosed on it, and it creates some significant health conditions because of that. So that's why there's a controversy now. How hard is it for people to say, wait a minute, you mean we're being overdosed with this and no one's told us about it?
Well, I tell you, Mr. Stockin, let's take this second commercial break. And when we come back, we'll give you an opportunity to talk about some of the health effects and the health impact that this is having upon the American people. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to this final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Mr. Dan Stockin, and the topic is fluoride, the fluoride controversy. And of course, Mr. Stockin, I think as we promised before our second commercial break, that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about some of the health issues that are related to fluoride and the impact that it is having upon our bodies through its cumulative impact without us knowing anything about it. So let's look at it from that perspective.
Yes, you know, a lot of times we have these chronic diseases in our country. People have these diseases that come upon them. You're not quite sure what caused it. You know, why do I have something like achy joints, or what did I do that maybe is causing a thyroid problem? Well, we're finding after 50 years of fluoridating now that a lot of the diseases we